Hello, everyone. This is ABCD on the Go podcast series. I am Dimitrios Papalexis, and I will be for this series. I'm very excited because today we will have an amazing episode launching this podcast series, and I will be interviewing Dean Quirk, who is a community development practitioner. And the topic today is a very interesting topic. It's about how to deal with difficult emotions during this coronavirus crisis. And I feel this is very important because both as individuals and also as community development practitioners and professionals, we deal with difficult emotions in our workplace, and we can also deal with our own difficult emotions and in our families. So I will welcome now Dean Quirk to the conversation. Hello, Dean.
Hello, Dimitrios. How are you?
I am good, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm going to well, despite the navigating the lot. I'm doing okay. I'm in good spirits.
That's very good to hear. Thank you for joining the episode today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, I think I will kick off by asking you to talk a bit about yourself and what you do at the moment, so people get to know who you are, and then we can jump straight into the topic.
Okay, sure. So currently I'm a community support advisor, contracted with the government, and I'm currently working on a project which is applicable to what's happening right now, and it's about developing partnerships with a number of key stakeholders to allow a greater digital outreach across our regional and more isolated communities. So currently I've been doing a lot of research with our clients and the communities in finding out about, what are the opportunities right now? What can we sort of set up that's going to support people going through this particular lockdown, where a lot of the things they were used to doing, their networks, the normal day-to-day working has basically been sort of taken away from them. So we're looking at a lot of different opportunities with that. And one of the clear findings from my research is that people want to stay connected. They're really open to looking at and developing new ways of doing things, and they want to do that through coming together in whether that be in support groups or that sort of transitioning into developing their own way of holding meetings and that type of thing. So that's currently sort of where I'm at in regards to my role at the moment. I've moved to sort of 5 days a week now. I was working 4 days a week, but I've now moved to 5 days.
This is interesting also because I guess this whole crisis and social distancing is affecting professionals in different ways. Like some people are losing income, even losing their jobs or getting reduced hours, and some people have to work more. So that's also another interesting thing to discuss. But before I ask you more questions about your work, which really sounds very interesting, I want to ask you in a more personal level, because I want this podcast also to have this element of the personal, relationship with myself and the audience. So I want to ask you, Dean, if you could talk to us a bit about a bit of your background, and also how this crisis might be affecting you in a personal level.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, so you want me to link from my background and how that's sort of playing out right now in this current crisis?
Yeah, not so much professionally, but talk a bit so the people get to know you a bit more personally about, a bit of your background, a summary, and how this crisis might have affected you. Maybe there is a roller coaster of the different emotions, phases, stages. I'm just keen to know how you are personally affected.
Sure. Okay. So personally, like many others, everything I've been used to doing, day to day has changed. So, my routines in regards to work, and my personal life have had to change quite drastically. So personally, a lot has changed. I'm finding now that I'm now working remotely, so that's one big change for me. So rather than going into the office and being used to having that particular routine, now I'm working full-time from home. So that has its own ramifications in itself. So I have a daughter of 10. So we've got myself and my wife, we're having to make sure that she's got enough to do. So currently today she's on school holidays. So she doesn't have the online schoolwork to follow. So we need to put some things in place that keeps her busy, because then, because I'm sure there'll be a number of people listening that also have kids that will find that it's not that easy to work from home, and also as well to be able to be responsible to make sure that your child's got enough on as well, so they're not just watching TV or looking at their devices. So that's been quite difficult to navigate that in the short term. We're starting to get some good foundations in place and trying to find routine. That's, I think, the most important thing for me personally is how do I find a routine that gives me some certainty amongst these uncertain times. So that sounds like a great advice. Can you point us to some of the emotions that you went through adapting from working in an office to working from home and having to juggle these two roles of father, husband, and community developer or professional? What are some of the emotions, Dean, that you went through in this process? So Dimitri, it's been a roller coaster. I'll be honest there. So initially, having to transition from the office to home there was a lot of uncertainty around, am I going to keep my job? That was for one. I'm a contractor. So so a lot of fear initially. I thought, look, if I decide I'm going to work from home, then there is a chance that I'm going to lose this job, because I work for the government, there are certain professionals that are staying on because we provide critical services.
Essential services.
Critical services, unfortunately, they don't have the option to work from home. So, look, my decision with working from home came from the respect of I wanted to protect my family and my community, if you like. That was really the decision I had to make. So there was a lot of fear initially around that. It meant that I had to negotiate with my superiors. That was difficult in itself, but eventually, we were able to come to some sort of agreement, which has allowed me to now work from home. So initially it was fear around my job. There was a lot of what I found was, and many people might be experiencing the same, was the more that I watched the news, and there's been so much of it, the more heightened my emotions became. I guess to the level of almost panic, because not just panicking for myself, but panicking because I have a family around me. I've got family in the UK. The UK a lot more impacted than us here in Australia. So there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of sadness, because sadness for the frontline staff that are having to deal with so many cases and make those difficult decisions around, who do I put onto a ventilator? These types of stories, the more that I was reading into it and following the news, I found that I was feeling almost helpless. So my emotions went from, say, fear, panic, to helplessness at times, because it's all out of our control. There's nothing really that we can really do about it. To then making the decision that, okay, I'm not going to listen or watch any more news around this other than to follow New South Wales Health or to look at the World Health Organization advice. And that was the decision I made. And what happened with that is it allowed me to then let go of a lot of the fear and just to focus more on what are some of the opportunities that are coming from this? What is some of the good from people being caught up in lockdown? And and that's when I started to change my thinking. so the observation around this was the more that I got caught up in negative thinking and, that ruminating on, the fear on what's going to happen and stuff like that, the more that I moved towards helplessness. As soon as I let go of that and started to focus on, okay, what can I do right now? How can I be more in the moment? Things started to change and shift. And then I started to feel more things around there's hope for the future. I felt more gratitude for being as lucky to live in Australia, to have all the facilities, medical help that we have access to. Started to focus more on that. So it's been a bit of a roller coaster in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, definitely. And as you speak, I'm also thinking of my own process. And I also went through some of these emotions and also denial as well, which is, it's a natural also emotion when in a stage when there is a sudden change like the one we had. And especially because I'm an extrovert. So I feel like I got to understand what does it mean to be an extrovert in these times when there is social distancing. And I also start noticing all the small, gifts and start working on my gratefulness and gratitude. So I started doing like a daily gratitude practice that I used to do in the past, writing down 3 things that I'm grateful for. So I'm wondering, for the lay audience, for some people who might not have those resources in place or these insights, about gratitude, hope, what are some of the practical things that we know that worked in? What are some of the things that people who find themselves in situations that there is lots of negativity, fear from the media, how well intentioned are, sometimes they do instill fear in people. So what are some of the practices that we know that work in this case and that help you to bounce back?
Sure. Look, I guess over, for a decade plus, I've had a daily practice of yoga, which I fuse with qigong and a meditation. And look, I know that doesn't work for everyone, but for me, I believe in the saying of prevention is so much better than a cure, if you like, trying to find a cure.
Sure.
Because what I've found in my own life is, and it really comes from the experience of going through emotional turmoil in the past. So I've had many bouts in my life of anxiety, panic attacks, those types of things, which I know come from that sense of losing control, if you like. And I guess for many, right now, this is a situation that would be presenting that, it's like
it's the unknown, right? We are in the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen.
We don't. And my experience is this is in my own life is the more that I bring routine into my life. So whether that's a routine of exercise, whether that's the routine of meditation, these are all practices which help to steer me more towards being in the present moment. And what I mean by the present moment is that when we focus on the now, what is going on right now, it helps us to move away from being caught up in that overthinking or ruminating of the mind to being more in the body. So we can do things like, and it doesn't have to be a meditation practice or a yoga practice, it can be things as easy as sitting in a chair and being aware of our feet being on the ground. Because when we acknowledge that, it's bringing us back into that situation that we're in the now. Yes, my feet, I can feel them on the floor. I can feel my bottom. It's connected to the seat. These types of things help us switch from, future projections of, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, the what if type of thinking. And also as well, away from the past of, that went wrong in the past, or, I'm not very good at this. It moves us away from this. And my experience is anything that brings us into the now, the right now, helps us to be able to cope with what's going on, because we're only having to deal with that one thing that's presenting, whether it's a bodily sensation, whether it's an emotion, whether it's a thought. We can then learn to question these things. Okay, I'm experiencing that. and we know that it's going to pass. It's going to pass. You know, if we utilize these particular strategies, and these are all coping strategies or self-care practices that anyone can develop.
And I like how you say, Dean, that everyone has his own practices. Like what happened with me, because I also do get the anxious mind, you know, and I also went through a roller coaster of emotions. So I kind of went back to basics very quickly, you know, and naturally. So some of the things that start happening for me, which is quite similar to your process, is I started dancing more, because I used to dance, you know, now and then, but I find myself the dancing brings me more into my body and relaxing my mind and bringing me to the present moment. I also start cooking more, which is another creative thing I do, you know. And yes, we're men, but we cook, we dance, we write, we meditate. So we are modern men. And I also, the other thing I noticed is that I exercise every day, because that's a legitimate, safe way to go out, you know, productive, keeping social distancing, and it's still allowed. So I find myself getting regular exercise because it gives me the fresh air, it gives me a good cardio, and it also balances my emotions. So I think I can't highlight enough, and I guess you probably agree, that any physical mindful practice, creative, besides the obvious benefits, it also helps with the emotional, with how we deal with our emotions, right?
Yeah, look, I fully agree, Dimitrios. Yeah, look, getting into nature and being around, particularly like, you know, trees and flowers and those types of things, really help to, you know, to lower basically, you know, out the emotions, but particularly helps us to calm down the nervous system. You know,
yes.
It gives us something to switch our focus from. So whether it's, you know, a stressful day or we've just read something in the news and, you know, it's all doom and gloom, we need to be able to switch our mind onto something else. And just being around nature, whatever it is, or dancing, cooking, anything that gets us into the body and gets us out of the mind is going to be really critical at this time.
Yes, and I want to ask you something else, because at the end of the day, this is an ABCD on the go series. So the framework, one of the frameworks we are using is the asset-based community development, which is all about the individuals and communities' gifts, strengths, talents. So in terms of you, Dean, adjusting to this situation, you know, and getting productive again, because this is what you are telling me, you start to get productive in a different ways in your work, in your life, with your family, with your community. What do you think it's one of your gifts, like let's say core gifts, that you are utilizing more at the moment to get you through these challenging times?
Yeah, good question, Dimitrios. So I would say my core gift is as a communicator, and what I mean by that is I like to use the communication skills with an other focus to it. So I like to connect with other people in order to help them connect with a larger network or community, if you like. So one of the ways that I've been able to, if you like, switch the focus from, you know, my own sort of fear-based thinking and that type of thing is by focusing on others. And the research that I've been doing has involved phoning people individually. So,
okay.
And during those phone calls, I've probably spent, I would say, about 45 minutes plus with each individual. And
wow.
What it's really, I guess what it's really taught me is that how amazingly adaptable is the human being.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely incredible. And it's really helped me to put things in perspective, because particularly these men, so they're all men that I'm doing the research with, that I've been speaking to. They've been involved in many different conflicts, let's say, over the years. So they're veterans. And
yes.
They've been able to, I guess, offer me a very different perspective on how to see things, because I was so amazed how positive and upbeat they were about lockdown, and how they've been able to adapt to this experience. And also,
what's the secret?
Oh, look, I think the secret is that resilience.
Yes, okay. And adaptability, maybe, right?
And they have that because they the resilience comes from, going through tough times and learning from that experience.
Yeah. And as you speak in a very quick story, like when this whole thing started happening, I got this feeling that it's a similar feeling that because I am from Greece, so I've been to the Greek army as an officer, and I got this feeling of being trapped, stuck in a place when you don't have your freedom. And then I remembered, the first thing that happened is I went through that in the past, and this is what helped me to get through that, like focusing on the positive, reflecting, creativity, arts, theater. A lot of good things happened also from that phase in my life where I had restrictions, so I had to be more creative. So I guess it does make sense when you say that these people, that they have all this life experience, and even they have been through hard things and trauma, etc. They have lots of resilience, and it's interesting also how you're using your communication skills to make connections in these times, and how important connections are in terms of emotions then.
Oh, it's everything. So in regards to, connecting it directly to your emotions is I know from my past, I've been, I guess one of those men, if you like, that have been quite detached from their emotions. I would say, unless, the emotions that I was, I guess, used to was either anger or because, being a man, it's something that, we sort of acknowledge in society that it's all right for a man to be angry, but the other emotions we tend to avoid. So in recent years, I've spent a lot of time working with teachers and other influences in my life around developing an emotional vocabulary and working on strategies that allow me to acknowledge different emotions in the moment. And what I've found by doing that and keep practicing that, it helps me to be more accepting of all the emotions, and it's helped me to navigate a lot more of those turbulent emotions that in the past may have pushed me towards reactiveness or getting caught up in self-destructive behaviors and those types of things. So I see connection as a huge way of developing acceptance of what is present right now, and not avoiding it. You've probably heard of the statement or the title of spiritual bypassing. It was something that I know I utilized. I've been involved in the yoga community for many years, and I know there was a time where I would use my spirituality and this feeling positive and always smiling and all of those types of things. Avoid the uncomfortable emotions.
Yes, I think there is a large wave of avoidance when the whole of full experience of humanity, as human beings, is not embraced. And I guess at the end of the day, if we don't allow the negative emotions to arise and process them and feel them and express them and overcome them, then we can reach the positive ones, not fully. And I can talk about emotions all day, but I'm really interested in the topic of connection, because something that happened with me is something that really helped me very quickly transition from negative emotions, anxiety, fear, this feeling of stuckness. Besides all the grounding practices we mentioned, like dancing, exercising, meditating, cooking, it was also catching up with friends on the phone and planning things for the future. This is what brought normality back to my life, making plans, in terms of work, in terms of different creative projects. Even this podcast series, it came from that restriction. It's a creative response. So I wonder what happens, in these connections, that it balances our nervous system so much. It seems it's something that's so naturally embedded into our humanity. And still, I wonder, do we tap enough into that, into the power of connection?
Mm. Look, as human beings, I think that's what makes us human. So naturally, there's that part of us that needs connection with others to whether that's through adversity or whether that's through the elation of enjoyment. But we need to be I guess in that experience. That the saying I'm hearing at the moment, which I really love, is we're in it together, and we are. I think this is the first time, maybe ever, that we've been in a situation where we're all experiencing. You could speak to anyone on the planet.
Yeah, the whole of human race.
Yes.
The virus doesn't discriminate, right?
It doesn't. So it's a time where, and there's some. I don't think the media focuses on the positive things that are coming from this situation enough.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the positives that are happening, because I'm starting to think from our conversation and everything, could we consider like coronavirus as a big teacher? Is it teaching us something, besides, be careful with what we do to animals, and besides social distancing and hygiene and all this, is it teaching us more than that? I'm curious. What is your experience?
My experience is that, look, I had a conversation today with an elder from the Western Sydney community.
Yes.
And what he said to me, it really struck me. He said, this is probably the biggest time that our need to develop a grassroots approach to how we live our lives in the future needs to be created from this, because this is a time where people are being forced inside.
Yes.
And in order to maintain that level of connection of a human being, we've got to reach out in many different ways. And as you've suggested yourself, we can be really creative in that. And what he was talking about is yes, he's connected from his volunteer capacity and his own sort of work networks, if you like. But what this has really forced him to do is it's taken him away from, I guess, some of the distractive habits which may revolve around the pubs and stuff like that, to being more focused on what's going on in his street right now, not just within his own family, but Mrs. Best that lives halfway down the road, her fence blew down in the storm. So he's connected with another one of his neighbours. He's put up a fence. He's now aware of the school that's across the road from him, and he can hear, the beautiful voices of the kids and stuff like that. So he's now aware of that part of the community. And what he's basically saying is by him being in lockdown, he's now paying so much more attention to those smaller networks in his environment, and it's getting him to really practice a lot of gratitude for what is available to him right now. Who can he reach out to? Who can he support? And what I'm basically saying in here is that I think this experience is teaching us to be less focused on ourselves and to be more focused on others.
Yeah. And I feel like it almost put us on a meditative state, that either there is some suffering happening, collectively, individually. So it seems that we have a choice here. Either we embrace the experience and we look for the opportunities to connect more to each other, to be more embodied, more present, less distracted. Or then the danger is that we see that only as a crisis, and then we go back and we recreate a dysfunctional society again. And I feel like as ABCD practitioners, we always talked about community connections and all these local networks and kindness and mutual aid. And it seems that it's all happening now, Dean, isn't it? I see lots of groups online also of mutual support and aid and community-led projects and lots of connections in that level.
Look, there is. And I think one thing that really stands out to me is the pure kindness and generosity by a lot of organizations that they're allowing or they're facilitating free programs, free trainings, free access to many things that would cost, quite a substantial fee in order to participate, which means that it's going to be available to such a wider, diverse range of people, which I think is fabulous. I've really observed that, just of late, there's a lot of kindness going on.
Yeah, there is even a kindness group, I think, on Facebook that's going viral, reporting all the projects that are based on kindness. And just an example of what you are saying, Dean, I was planning some youth events with the Cumberland Council for Youth Week, and those events got cancelled, and it's quite the same. At the same time, we managed to film some videos that they will then be broadcasted online. And I was talking to the youth practitioner there, and we were discussing about now this will create the opportunity for any young person to access those videos. As you were saying, it's an opportunity. It's kind of more democratic way, because it's actually breaking all the barriers, the geographical barriers, and people are connecting. I'm even connecting with old friends from Greece, and different countries in the world that I have friends with. So it's interesting times, isn't it?
It certainly is, and like you said, I think people have a choice in these times, and I don't know. I like the saying around the choice of let's choose love over fear.
Yes.
And I think the more that we can sort of, I think initially it can be quite difficult. It can be just something we say, let's choose love over fear, but
yes,
how do we actually cultivate that? How do we do that? And how we do it is to bring in the practice of doing it. So, I'd like to offer this to people that, if you are feeling helpless, if you are struggling, then do something for somebody else. Reach out, because I think now more than any other time, I think in history, we've got the access to so many things online that can really help us. There's, like you said, there's the free trainings, there's the free programs, there's free groups that we can join. There's so much opportunity to find new and creative ways of connecting, if you like. And the more that we switch our mind to this other focus, the more that we can move forward in love, that love of wanting to connect with others, to wanting to create something which is going to benefit future generations, because we know we've reached a point, if you like, in society and in our world where we cannot go on the way we are going.
Exactly. Yes, and I feel every small thing we do, and we talk about that in ABCD, small wins, small actions, every small thing of generosity, kindness, connection we do can have a big impact, and it can actually inspire people to do the same for their neighbors, And I feel it's also important for us, like storytellers, and speakers, to go out and create content like we are doing, because I feel besides the media, that they are informing people, but sometimes they're also spreading panic. I feel that it's important to put out content that is inspirational, it's creative, it's empowering, And I feel like it's important for everyone to step up and use their gifts to offer something to someone. And everyone has gifts, Dean, don't they? Because sometimes we talk about vulnerable people and vulnerable communities, but my experience working, with vulnerable youth and vulnerable communities is that they have so many assets and so many gifts. And as you said, sometimes people get better by giving, right? Gifting their gifts away. True.
It reminds me of so when I was sort of preparing for today, I was thinking about how interested I am in behavioral science. I'm particularly around people's patterns and how those patterns develop and where they come from, and it brings me to that focus around the threads of our lives. So if we look back, if we look back on the threads of our life, and we, I'm a 49-year-old man. So when I look back on the threads of my life, I look at there's particular events that have taken place in my life that have steered the journey of where I've got to where I am now. My focus. So now I focus on working with men around difficult emotions and in the area of domestic violence. But I think back to how did I get to this moment?
Yes.
I think this is where our gifts can be really utilized. So when we look back at the threads of our life, we can maybe look at, okay, so that happened in my life. I experienced adversity there. And then the learning from that is, okay, I experienced that. I made some lifestyle changes, and then it led to this. I think the power in that helps people to get more clarity around what their actual gift is. So, for example, if a person was struggling with their education, say at school, but then they left school and they decided that, the schooling model wasn't something that really brought the best out of me. However, I really like the idea around entrepreneurialism. So they start to develop skills about, so they start to look at things where they can upskill themselves around their areas of interest. And then before you know it, they're involved in some sort of education that was lacking back when they were a child, if you like. So what I'm trying to say here is that when we look back and we see, okay, I was lacking that area, sometimes that lacking can lead to where our actual gift is. So that person lacked education as a child, then becomes a teacher in entrepreneurial skills.
And this is making the most of what we have been through, and making the most of our difficulties. And I guess we're also talking, Dean, about an appreciative mindset, and we are talking about narrative therapy, because I have psychology training, so this is something I apply a lot in my work in psychology and also with communities, is what stories do we tell about what's happening right now in our life? We can see ourselves as victims, we can see ourselves as trapped, as, we can see our society in a crisis, and we are. At the same time, we can say a much better story, right? We can say a story of hope, a story of kindness, a story of possibility.
Sure. Look, I think I've got a quote right here. Actually, I'll draw from it, and it's so basically the quote is around. It talks about stories allow us to normalize and navigate what we're feeling, which is a solution to our problem. And I see that as happening right now.
Can you repeat that, Dean?
So basically, the quote is, so it's saying that stories allow us to normalize and validate what we're feeling. Which
stories allow us to navigate, to validate, to normalize and navigate what we're feeling. Yes, brilliant.
Which can then be a solution to our problem. So what I mean by that is you've probably experienced it yourself, Dimitrios, that say, for example, you're with a client and your client talks about a really difficult situation in their lives, and then they start to share the story around it. And then what happens is from that story, the other person shares that, I also experienced, a very similar thing in my life. And then what happens is that there's a connection drawn between those two individuals, that shared experience, which allows the opportunity for healing to take place. Because it's like that. When you feel that somebody else has experienced the same thing as you, it helps us to normalize and validate that there's nothing wrong with me. Somebody else has experienced this. And I think this is what what is going on as a collective right now. If we can draw on that story, or that experience, that we know everybody else has experienced the same thing as we are. All people will be experiencing fear. People will be panicked. People will be experiencing hope as well for the future. We'll be having all of these multitude of emotions, which is going to actually connect us. And I think the opportunity in our storytelling is to take the position of sharing from a vulnerable space, rather than to to try and sugarcoat it and come across as, I've got this under control and I'm positive and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. I think what will happen there is we will band-aid what's really going on, and we will actually miss the beauty which will come from us navigating these difficult emotions, and to be able to tell a story about how I got through this.
And also share our vulnerabilities, right? Because it is a moment that we are vulnerable, both individually and collectively, isn't it?
Big time. Look, we are vulnerable, and I think that vulnerable is what's gonna bring us together, and it's gonna be our real strength. Is that coming together, because that's what we're seeing when people are saying we're all in it together. What they're saying is that we're all experiencing fear. We're all here. We're all here. We don't know what's going to happen. We're all in these uncertain times. We need to draw on that, because that's what's going to really bond us and bind us together. And also as well for the future, is going to be the driver that's going to. I know a lot of groups are going to work on prototypes for the future, which are going to be preventative from anything like this ever happening again.
And talking about prototypes, I want to share a quick story I have about one of my other experiences. So something that I observed happening online is that a lot of people, justifiably yet, they jumped online and they start marketing their products and offering courses and offering solutions. And I experienced some anxiety because I also run a social enterprise, as you know. So I thought, why am I not doing that? But then what I felt is that I need to do it in a way that honors my vulnerability and my process, because I feel it's very important. Yes, there is anxiety. Yes, there is fear. Yes, people need to pay bills. Yes, everyone is adapting and going online and trying to keep monetizing. But I feel it's very important also to prototype, as you said, from a place of connection, from a place of vulnerability, from a place of authenticity, and offer real value. And I feel for me, it's very important to do it in a teamwork. For me, I feel like the quote of "it takes a village to raise a child," and also the other African proverb that you can go fast alone, but you can go longer together. I feel all this is coming to life for me right now.
Yeah, look, I agree, Dimitrios. I think this is the time now not to go alone and to be gun-ho, and it's very easy to move to the solution. I'll speak from a man perspective. So
yes.
Being a man, I can move straight to the problem fixer mindset very quickly, and my wife will quickly put me back in my place when I try and do that. But I think this isn't a time for jumping on the bandwagon and trying to find solutions. This is a time for deep listening.
Yes.
And for being. It's a time for coming together, listening to each other's stories. It's a time for connection and navigating a way together, not alone.
And listening to our own emotions also, and our intuition, right?
True. That's
and
it.
Listening together, as you said. So it's been amazing talking to you, Dean, in this podcast. I feel like there is so much value we are putting out there, and I hope that our audience will enjoy this podcast. I would like to ask you, how can people connect with you after this show? How can people reach out to you or learn more about you and your amazing work?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Dimitrios. So people can email me. So I'll share my email address with you in your notes if you wish. But it's an easy one. It's my name, Dean, all lowercase, YMG, which stands for Young Men's Group. So Dean YMG @gmail.com. They can also connect with me on my Facebook page, which is Deleting the Patterns of Abuse. So later in the year, I've got a book coming out called Toxic Love, which I co-author with a psychologist, Indira Novic, and that's about breaking the patterns of abuse. So yeah, they can contact me directly that way, or just to go onto my personal Facebook page, which is Dean Quirk at Facebook.com. So they're the ways that people can get in contact. They can also contact me on my email address, holistichealthconcepts@gmail.com as well. So that's another way to connect with me.
Thank you so much, Dean. And thank you to our listeners. This was the podcast episode about how to deal with difficult emotions. Stay tuned for more episodes and keep safe.